funny how people forget, not when they're distracted, not when they're overwhelmed, but when they get comfortable. When they start thinking your loyalty is default. When your silence becomes routine. When your presence becomes background noise. That's when they forget who built the foundation they now take for granted. That's when they forget who held them down when everything was falling apart, who clapped for them when they couldn't find their own rhythm, who stood in their corner when the crowd got quiet. And eventually, when comfort grows fat, gratitude goes blind. You were never loud about your effort. You didn't scream your loyalty. You didn't parade your sacrifices. You just did what real ones do. You showed up every damn time. Not for applause, not for recognition, just because that's who you are. Solid, unshakable, rare. But the truth about consistency, it gets overlooked. It gets mistaken for availability. People assume you'll always be there because you always were, until you're not. They forgot. So I reminded them, not with words, not with rage, but with absence so sharp it cut through their illusions. Because I got tired, not physically, not even emotionally. I got tired of being invisible in a room I helped light. Tired of pouring into people who only showed up with empty hands and loud needs. Tired of feeling like the only one who remembered what this bond was built on. Let's make one thing clear. This isn't about bitterness. It's not about revenge. This is about remembering who I am. And more importantly, reminding them. You don't get to treat me like an option and expect me to stay loyal like a priority. You don't get to forget the weight I carried just because I didn't complain about it. You don't get to mislabel my silence as weakness, when that silence was me choosing peace over pettiness. But make no mistake, just because I went quiet doesn't mean I went soft. See, silence can scream louder than any argument. It echoes in the gaps. It haunts the spaces where I used to be. It's in the text that doesn't come, the support that no longer arrives, the laughter that no longer fills the air. My absence became their mirror, and they didn't like the reflection. That's the thing about being real in a world built on temporary. You don't fit in, you intimidate. You challenge people to either rise with you or retreat into their comfort zones. And when they can't match your energy, they start to question your intensity. Call it too much. Say you've changed. No, I just evolved. I just stopped shrinking to fit spaces that couldn't hold the full version of me. I stopped watering dead roots, stopped building bridges with the same hands that got burned setting them up, stopped offering clarity to people who were never confused, just convenient with their forgetfulness. Because real ones, we don't broadcast our exits. We move. We disappear from places that no longer feel sacred. And when we go, we don't leave a note. We leave a void. They thought I'd always be there. Thought the light I gave would burn forever without fuel. But even the sun rests. Even the strongest trees drop leaves. And even the realest soul runs dry when love turns into labor. They forgot who walked through fire just to keep the warmth in their world, who stood in storms just to shelter their emotions, who stitched their silence with my own thread of understanding. And when I stopped, when I fell back, that's when they started remembering. But by then, I was already gone. Not bitter, just done. It's easy to misread the quiet ones. Easy to take their resilience for granted. But what they don't see is the war that happens inside. The battle between love and logic. Between staying and saving yourself. Between loyalty and self-respect. I fought that war. I bled in it. And when I walked out, I wasn't carrying guilt anymore. I was carrying truth. Truth that I'm not for everyone. Truth that not everyone deserves access. Truth that love without respect is just emotional slavery dressed in sentimental language. And so, I stopped explaining. I stopped sending paragraphs trying to translate my worth into a language they refused to understand. I stopped hoping they'd wake up and realize the gift they were handed. I let go. Because eventually, peace stopped being a desire. It became a requirement. And if I had to lose people to find it, so be it. They say when you level up, the crowd thins out. But what they don't say is how quiet it gets, how your phone goes silent, how people you once called family start treating your boundaries like betrayal, how they twist your growth into arrogance. But I didn't grow to be liked. I grew because staying small was killing me. The same ones who cheered when I was accessible, they ghosted when I became intentional. The ones who leaned on me didn't flinch when I started to wobble. They watched me carry their weight, and when I stumbled, they blamed me for not being strong enough. That's when I knew they didn't love me. They loved what I did for them. So I took all that pain, all that silence, all that overlooked effort, and I turned it into power, into presence, into clarity. And that clarity changed everything. Now I walk different. I talk less. I listen more, not because I'm afraid, but because I finally value my peace more than their opinions. I stopped showing up uninvited. Stopped forcing conversations with people who made comfort zones out of disrespect. Stopped explaining storms to people who only understood sunshine. They forgot because they never really saw me. Just the benefits, the loyalty, the effort, but never me. And when I removed those things, suddenly they missed me. Not because they realized my value, but because their access expired. I'm not angry. I'm awake. I'm not loud. I'm laser focused. I don't need to prove anything. My absence already taught the lesson. Now, they say, I'm cold, distant, changed, and they're right. Because I had to become the version of me that doesn't break every time someone forgets my worth. I had to become the version that doesn't negotiate with people who confuse care with control. I had to become my own reminder, my own protector, my own sanctuary. Because when they forgot, they made room for me to remember. To remember that I was never made to beg for space in rooms I helped build. That my value was never dependent on their recognition. That my heart is not a charity. My loyalty is not a discount code. And my time, it's expensive now. So I let them feel the weight of a life without me in it. Not to hurt them, but to heal me. Not to punish, but to restore balance. Because the only thing worse than being forgotten is staying in places where you're remembered wrong. And I will never again explain my worth to people who watched me drown and called it discipline. Who watched me carry pain in silence and said I was strong, not realizing I was just alone. I've changed because I had to. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be real. I'm not here to be remembered by people who only value you when you're convenient. I'm here to build a life so solid, even the echoes of their absence can't shake it. And now, I've stepped out of the shadows. Not to be seen, but to be untouchable. Not to demand attention, but to command respect without asking for it. Because I learned this, silence is not emptiness, it's elevation. When they stopped hearing from me, it wasn't because I disappeared, it was because I outgrew the noise. When I stopped replying, it wasn't out of spite, it was out of clarity. They wanted access without investment, loyalty without effort, love without the labor it requires to keep something real. But real ones, we don't beg, we don't repeat ourselves, we don't lower our standards to preserve relationships that drain us. We rise, quietly, powerfully. And when the dust settles, we are the last ones standing, not because we're lucky, but because we learned how to heal in isolation while they depended on applause to feel whole. Now when they speak my name, it trembles on their lips, because it's heavy, because it's haunted, not by rage, but by the realization that what they lost can't be replaced. They try to mimic the presence I gave so freely. They try to find the same warmth in colder arms. But nothing feels like the real one after you've mishandled it. They forgot. But the world has a way of reminding people who the pillar really was when the structure starts to crumble. When things fall apart and I'm no longer there to hold them up, the truth becomes loud. And by then, it's too late. Because I'm not circling back. I'm not giving one more explanation to people who heard every word and still chose confusion. Growth taught me discipline. Pain taught me silence. And both taught me that not every connection deserves resurrection. Some doors stay shut, not out of hate, but out of wisdom. I've buried too much of myself trying to keep people alive who were already gone in spirit, and I refuse to do that again. They called me real when it was beneficial, when they needed understanding, when they needed a soul to absorb their damage. But the moment I asked for the same silence, indifference, distance, they forgot I bleed too, that the strong ones break too. That loyalty, when it's one-sided, becomes a noose. But I cut the rope. I walked out of the fire they left me in. And I didn't just survive. I rebuilt with ash-covered hands and tear-stained resolve. They thought I'd come back the same, but I didn't. I came back unrecognizable, hardened, clear, free. And you know what happens when you stop chasing people? You realize how many of them were only ahead because you were pushing them. How many stood tall only because you were kneeling beside them. How many found strength in your presence but never returned it. That realization stings, but it also liberates. Because now I choose. I choose who gets my energy, who hears my voice, who feels my presence. And the bar is higher now. Not because I think I'm better, but because I've seen what happens when I lower it. They climb up just to disrespect the throne they beg to sit at. This version of me, he's guarded, but not bitter. He's cold to the unworthy, but warm to the rare. He's not here for revenge. He's here to remind you, remind everyone, that real isn't loud. Real isn't always visible. Real is quiet, steady, and unforgettable once it's gone. So let them miss me. Let them scroll through old memories. Let them feel that ache in their chest at 2 a.m. when the silence is louder than their lies ever were. Let them replay the moments they thought didn't matter. Let them remember the conversations they half listened to. Let them realize that what they lost wasn't a placeholder, it was the anchor. And when they see me again, not the version they knew, but the one I became through every betrayal, every dismissal, every ignored message, they won't recognize me. And that's the point. Because this time, I'm not stepping into their world. I'm not shrinking to fit their comfort zone. I'm not offering open arms to hands that never once reached back. I'm standing where I belong, elevated, evolved, unavailable. They forgot, but life has a way of making people remember. Not with guilt, not with punishment, but with reflection. When you've had something real and let it go, every future interaction is just a watered-down version of what you once had. And nothing compares, nothing satisfies. Because what they lost wasn't just a person, it was a presence, a frequency, a force. And I don't say that with ego, I say that with truth. Because I know what I bring. I know the weight of my love, the depth of my care, the rare peace I give just by being present. And now that they've felt it, they'll search for it in faces that resemble mine, in voices that speak like mine, in souls that shine like mine. And they'll find pieces, but never the whole. That's the consequence. Not my wrath, not my destruction, but my distance. They thought I'd always be the same, always forgiving, always available, always waiting. But now they know. The real one remembered who he was. And the moment I remembered, I became unforgettable.